Good evening, Charlie.
How are you, Ross?
How we doing, my man?
Long time.
Welcome.
Long time no see.
We always called this, we did say when we named this podcast that it would be called Talking Florida Rugby Occasionally, because we really didn't know how often we were going to do this thing. Initially it was weekly, then now things are getting a little busier. It's going to be bi-weekly, I think, for a little bit. Maybe when the season starts, I'm sure we'll get back to being weekly. We may change the format a little bit. We'll see. But for now, we're going to go bi-weekly. But welcome to episode 17 of Talking Florida Rugby Occasionally. My name is Ross Davenport, fatback referee coordinator, color voice of Rugby ATL, who had their first little 404 scrimmage, their development squad scrimmage, which we'll get to in a little bit here, one of my three quick things. But our episode today is about the UCF Knights. Back then they were the Golden Knights, so we can talk about them being the Golden Years, Charlie. They're just the Knights these days. But back then they were the Golden Knights, and probably the last sort of Florida rugby dynasty nationally. And we're going to have a chat with the coach of that team, Jason Granich, and a few players from those two national championship sides and the runner-up side in 2015. But before we get to that, let's get to our three quick things, Charlie.
Okay, let's go.
2 weeks to sort of go over stuff. So yesterday, up at Life in Marietta, Georgia, we had the silver versus black 404 pathway development sort of scrimmage. So as with a few of the other MLR sides, Atlanta has a developmental side that calls themselves 404, which is the area code up there. And they've kind of got bigger and bigger. It's their second year of Rugby ATL, obviously between seasons now. The new MLR season will start. I think it's scheduled to start in March. They're starting a little later than they have done in the past. But so they had a black versus silver there. Well, it's more like white, as you can see on your screen now. Scoring a try coming up, I think, and Charlie pulled this little clip here. We have three former Florida Rugby products playing in this game. And scoring the try there was Stephen Kruger, former Jupiter Warrior, and UNF. I forget what their nickname is. Is it the Ospreys, Charlie? I always forget their nickname, the UNF.
The Deadbirds.
Deadbirds. Well, I think Ospreys is the name of the athlete. The rugby program calls themselves the Deadbirds. Yeah, so Stephen Kruger with a try there. And we also had Marcus Young of Key Biscayne, who started at 12 for the white team, which is an awesome opportunity, playing outside number 10, Kirk Coleman, who is Atlanta's number one fly half, former Super Rugby player. So that was an awesome opportunity for Marcus Young. I did not watch the entire game. I just had time to watch bits and pieces. Hopefully I'll get a chance to watch it over the coming weeks. It's on the Rugby ATL Facebook page if you'd like to check it out. And also Tommy Gallo, former Copy Warriors, who have been plying his trade in England before the pandemic for such sides as Richmond, London, etc., going to college in the UK, but he's doing it remotely right now, so he's had the chance to join them up there in the 404 program as well. Tommy Gallo, who you see clearing this ruck right here, number 22, may have been off his feet a little bit, but there was no contest by the team in white, so he got away with it. Yes, we had three Florida Rugby products playing in that game, which is awesome. So keep an eye on Rugby ATL, and we'll see if any of those gentlemen make the final roster when that's announced, probably in the new year. It's great to see some rugby being played just, 9 hours up the road, Charlie? Obviously in Florida, we're still a number of weeks away, I would say, from any contact. As you mentioned, Charlie, there are some teams training at the moment. I say quote training because no contact allowed. It's just ball skills and fitness. But there are a few teams out there that are allowed to practice, as we see, training, but no contact going on at the moment. But yeah, good to see three Florida Rugby products there making their name up in Rugby ATL. Our second thing is also youth represented, or youth involved, I should say, is that USA Rugby announced their verified HPP, so high performance program, their national development program. So part of the sort of USA restructuring thing was that they were going to come up with these proper pathways. Actually, high performance pathway, they're calling it. So part of this was they announced 8 newly verified national development programs this past week, and that came after a vetting process which confirmed that there was the 8 programs that met the benchmarks out by USA Rugby HPP. One of them was the Panther Rugby Academy, which is run by USA South. I think they're having their first camp coming up later this month. I think it's up just outside of Atlanta. Also in there among the 8 were ARPTC out of Arkansas, EIRA, which is run by rugby legend Salty Thompson, is basically countrywide, has different programs around the country, and then Rhinos Rugby Academy, which I always know when I go out to referee out in Vegas or Los Angeles at the Sevens, they're always impressive in their green and black jerseys, the Rhino Rugby Academy out of California. So good news there. The Panther Rugby Academy is one of the 8 national development programs. So hopefully that results in some kids from the Florida area getting looked at a higher level of representative rugby come the new year, I would think. And number 3, the Utah Warriors, who of course feature Florida rugby product out of Western, Alex Tucci. Probably talked to him. God, it seems like months ago now, Charlie. We talked to Alex Tucci 4 months ago, one of our first episodes. He's coming off ACL surgery and could perhaps start for Utah this season. They unveiled plans over the last couple of weeks to construct a new stadium in time for the 2023 Major League Rugby season. As you can see, Charlie, there showing some of the images of what the stadium is going to look like. Should be holding 20,000 or so. And I think Glendale and Houston are the only other 2 rugby-specific stadiums in the country. This would be number 3. Perhaps we'll get one out here in the East at some point. But yeah, 20,000 fans and a great development there out of Utah. So they came out of nowhere. Nobody really thought, because they have a really nice facility they share with the soccer team there in Utah, the pro soccer team. And nobody really thought this was something they needed, but they've clearly got some great ambitions. And they're going to build a nice little stadium out there in Utah where there's beautiful scenery, beautiful weather most of the year.
With big in goals. I like that.
Yeah. Well, even in the Premiership these days, you see, so there's a couple of big goals that are 5 meters long, I think, but that looks like a nice little 10-meter one there.
At least, yeah.
Sure. So good news on the Utah side of things. MLR, obviously things will start sort of cranking up over here. And obviously Atlanta, I think things going this weekend, and I'm sure a lot of the teams, depending on their local laws when it comes to the fire, will get things going over the next few weeks as we crank up. And of course, MLR Miami, there isn't any more news on that at the moment. I also did try to research, Charlie, on this Miami 10s team that's playing in Bermuda. Nobody seems to know exactly what's going on. I saw the Ohio Aviators, who is another USA side, sending a team to this prestigious
Why so much
event
mystery? I don't know why so much mystery.
I mean, until they had a roster, I assume they were just trying to figure out who they want on their roster. Aviators announced their roster, I think, this past week. All American guys, I think, well, MLR guys for the most part. It was a pretty decent roster, had some solid names on there. So we'll see maybe if the Miami team, because I think the tournament starts in, 3 weeks or so. There's 3 consecutive weekends out in Bermuda. I know Tiger Rugby and Paul Holmes, based out of Florida, doesn't do as much of their work here, but they are getting a little more involved as the MLR, sort of potential MLR team keeps up on us. Tiger Rugby is apparently behind it somehow. Nobody really wants to. Maybe I'm just not asking the right people, Charlie. But hopefully somebody listening to this will let me know what the hell is going on with this Miami. Was it Miami Sun or Miami Suns?
The
Suns, Phoenix Suns, or the Miami Sol, but the Miami Suns. So we'll see how that goes down over the next few weeks. Maybe we'll see a Florida rugby player or 2. I did text Ronnie Suarez, or who you would think might have heard if any of his Florida Sevens guys were involved in the mix, but he didn't text me back, shockingly.
Oh.
Right, I was not going to say anything about that. Anyway,
he's not the quickest.
Enough of the nonsense. Let's get back to. Ronnie did just text me back. He doesn't even like tens. He just texted me back, and he said he doesn't even like tens. So he's obviously not too involved in that on the Miami Suns side of things. But all right, as I said, enough of the nonsense. Let's get to why we're here, Charlie, which is to discuss the UCF men's rugby team from 2013 to 2015. They made 3 national champions. Go ahead, Charlie. So you got
I just wanted to say that we have a long list of topics and people we want on the podcast, and we have this one just like from the beginning because it is a great story, and we wanted to put it in the history books, which is more or less what we're doing.
For sure. Listen, those of you that came to Florida Rugby after 2015 might not know the story of UCF Rugby and a little dynasty 7 to 5 years ago. So we're going to talk to the coach from that time and one of the president and one of the players. So let's bring Jason Granich in, otherwise known as Kiwi. There he is, live from somewhere in the middle of Florida, I think. Right, Jason?
Yeah, living in Orlando, buddy.
Been there for a while now. When did you move from New Zealand to Orlando?
I prefer Orlando for the weather.
Yes.
Home's always home, and when you get a little bit older, you kind of appreciate the beauty of New Zealand, which I didn't appreciate when I was younger, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And obviously, I miss the the rugby culture, the rugby environment. Just rugby's our religion. It's our everything. You drive down the road and you see fields full of 5-year-olds playing rugby. You're at the club. You're at the clubhouse from 8 o'clock in the morning on Saturday until 8 o'clock at night after a few beers when you're older. And rugby's everything. I miss that. I miss that immensely. But the weather in Florida very hard to beat. Very, very hard to beat.
What year did you move here, Jason?
I moved here in 2006. Originally, I came here in '99 for a year. My cousin owned a construction company, and I was over in the UK. And he said, "Oh, why don't you stop by in Orlando for a couple of on your way back to New Zealand for a couple of weeks?" And I ended up staying here for 6 months. And then I went back, and I always thought about Orlando because it was December and I was wearing flip-flops and shorts, and I was like, "This is their winter," So
well, you're also wearing flip-flops and shorts in New Zealand in December, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but it's
but not so much in August.
Not so much right now. Yeah, not so much right now.
For sure. So you moved to Orlando, obviously a rugby guy in New Zealand. You sent me a bit of your bio, played some serious rugby there, and then moved here and ended up, you played for Orlando initially, right?
Yeah, I played for the Orlando Rugby Club. I actually back in the heyday. The first year that I played for Orlando is when Iron Horse Rugby and Orlando merged.
Right. I remember that.
And we had a very successful run in 2006, 2007, 2008. And I continued with Orlando Rugby up until 2012. And we had, we won. I want to say 4 Fly Cups. It might be 3. It might be 4. We were a predominant side, and what we used to do is we used to get guys from Wales. We used to get 3 or 4 guys every year come over, and my cousin, who owned a construction company, would give them work, and they'd play for us. And some of my best mates, like my mate Lloyd and Barney, and mates that are forever. They came over here for 6 months and played rugby, and it was just it was fantastic. Fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember the days when Boca used to get a few New Zealanders and Welshmen coming over, but it seems like those days are gone now. Things are a little different, I think, immigrationally, to get over here and play some rugby.
I think back then they used to the referee used to want to check your ID, and we were like, "Oh, we don't have any kind of USA ID on us." And if you had too many overseas driver's license or passports, they only allowed you to play so many foreigners. So
that's still the case. Yeah, you're only allowed. You got to have a maximum of green card holders or foreign players, as you said.
Yeah, those were the good old days with the old rugby. Rugby's changed a lot from 2006 to now. It's great for me as a rugby fan to see the youth. When I first come here, there was no such thing as youth. You either made the A side, or you got a run in the B side, or some of the A side players had to play B side games as well as A side games, and the game has just grown tenfold. It's good to see, and I have a 3.5-year-old son, and it'd be just great for him to be able to start playing rugby when he was 7 or 10 or 9 or 5. You know what I mean? So do I think we can achieve that? Yeah, I think we can achieve that.
Yeah, we're definitely getting there. Rugby is, in certain parts of the state is doing very, very well. Other parts of the state, not so much. But yeah, the more we get the kids playing, the better they'll be at the high school level, and the better they'll be if they stick around here for college. Now, speaking of college, so you finished up playing at Orlando. Or let's talk about how the UCF coaching opportunity came around. I know they had a pretty decent season in 2011-12, and their coach, the coach was before, but he stepped away. So how did you end up with the gig?
Well, what happened is when I was playing for Orlando and we were going to the South playoffs, we decided to go out to UCF and have a little bit of a scrimmage and a hit out against one another. And when I went there, I remember looking at all these guys for the UCF team, and I was like, wow, these are some big boys. The back line, I remember this so clear in my mind. The back line, what they did, the forwards were doing their work, and the back line, they were just kicking the ball to each other the whole practice. And I was like, wow, they kind of need some direction. There wasn't a thought in my mind about coaching them. But then Jason Ross, who was the president of the club, reached out to me and he said, hey, Kiwi, would you like to, come out and maybe help us out a bit? And I said, sure. I said, my fee is $6 beer, $10 for gas. Can you supply that? And we had a meeting, and and the rest is history. We kind of got together, and they didn't appreciate this guy coming in there and telling them what to do, and I had to, these guys are twice my size. I had to come in there and kind of beat my chest and stamp my authority, and they were like, who the heck is this guy coming in and telling us what to do? But over time,
you had the accent. That helped.
Yeah, I had the accent, but so sometimes people with accents think they know all about rugby, but they don't. But anyway, they started to kind of believe in the when we were winning, but we were winning big, and we were winning bigger and bigger and bigger, and we were just dominating everybody, and it worked.
Sure, Charlie, let's bring Jason in, because we have Jason in the green room. As we mentioned his name, Jason Ross, former president and captain of the team. Now, Jason, you've been there. I think this was going into your senior year. 2012-13 was your senior year. So talk about what your thought was bringing Jason in. What did you know about him that you thought he could be lead you guys to what he did?
I knew that Kiwi was a guy that would give us some discipline. That was what the team was honestly lacking back at that point. We had raw athletic ability, but no direction. So when I initially spoke to Kiwi about the opportunity of coaching, he says, hey, I'm going to do it my way. And if someone doesn't like it, I'm going to tell them straight up, hey, this is what you have to do. This is, it's going to be my way or the highway. So I loved that from the beginning. It definitely took some growing on the team. There's definitely some people that felt like he was, I guess, adversarial, but it's what we needed. We honestly had raw athletic ability, but we needed direction. And he was able to give that to the team. He's able to put us into the position to succeed.
Listen, college kids, they'll all need a bit of discipline and direction. Now, talk about the team that you had in that year before, the 11-12. You obviously had, I know you had a good core, especially guys from down here in South Florida that had played high school rugby. I'm sure you had some newbies as well as some perhaps converts. But UCF, a big school with a decent football program, you perhaps had some converts as well. But talk about the team at 11-12, and did you sort of know perhaps if you got a good coach that you could do something special in 2013?
Well, Gerhard, who's not in the chat today, we would draw kids from South Florida Rugby and all the high school programs, and also we would draw kids from the gyms, large bodies that we know that could take hits, give hits. And we knew that when we would have people on the field, then we would give them the coaching that we had at that point in time. We had the feeling that, hey, if we could put these kids in the proper position, and kind of explain to them the process of the game, they would be able to succeed. You have kids that get on the rugby field and they see someone else kick and they're like, oh, I can kick too. It's like, maybe that's not your thing. Lag back from that. And Kiwi was able to come out there and explain to them, hey, your position, you're going to take that ball and you're going to crash it. You're going to crash it 30, 40 times a game. And that's going to be your job. And he was able to, get that message across to the kids to the point that they could understand it and actually implement it during the game process. I don't think that we would be in the position that we were if it wasn't for Kiwi, because Gerhard and I were able to get the talent out to the field, but Kiwi was able to teach those kids how to play the game and how to play their position.
Now, you're a back obviously as a career, but when you saw the team, was this your philosophy even before you saw the team? You said you'd seen them in the South playoffs the year before and saw their physical prowess. But your philosophy, I know I read an article which really mentioned that you were really about the basics of the game, simplifying the offense, short passing, running straight, running hard. Was that something that you just had before you came in, or was that something that when you saw this team, you said, this is how we have to play?
Yeah, no, that's something that this is how it went. So I started rugby when I was 5. So my skill set was, my skill set is better in most aspects of the game. When I saw these guys, I knew they were big, they lifted weights, they were strong, they were powerful, but the skill set was below par, and what I mean by that is, how some teams do big skip out passes or kick passes or this or this or this.
Right.
So what I did is when I put together my trainings, I knew that we didn't have enough time to bring their skill set levels to where it needed to be. So let's work on what they were good at. Let's work on the physicality, the size, and especially the fitness. So most of our trainings, we had 4 drills at max, maybe 5 drills at max. And what worked really well is if I thought for 1 minute that, if they made a mistake or they were, they weren't putting in the effort, I'd have them in the corner and we'd do something what is a hini moa, where you sprint from corner to corner, then you jog the end goal, and then you sprint corner to corner. And sometimes during a training, that's all we'd do all training, because at the end of the day, the fitter team always wins. And our success come from three or 4 factors. The first factor was we were big. We were very big. And if you look at the video of the 2014 National Championship with USA Eagle guys saying, look at the size of these guys, from UCF, they're monsters, but not only are they monsters, they're fit and they can run for 80 minutes. They can run for 90 minutes. They can, and when you reach the level of national championship game, you play Saturday for 80 minutes and get beaten up. You've got a short recovery, and then you've got to play another 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And in this country, other countries, that's unheard of. You'll play your semi and quarterfinals, and then you'll get a week off to play your finals. But here, you play it the day before, so it's about how you recover, and it's about how fit you are. The fitter you are, the least likely you're going to get injured. So back to your question, I looked at them and I thought, how do we just get these guys just to run hard and straight, and then when people are running at us, we just smash them. So all we worked on was a lot of tackling practice, a lot of rucking practice, and keeping the ball close. We don't need to do no skip passes. We don't need to do fancy football. If you look at the greatest teams in the history of rugby, you look at the English, the All Blacks, they keep it close. The ball in hand wins you rugby games.
For sure. Now, Jason, how much of that team, obviously then high school rugby was still sort of just kind of getting going. You guys had played a little bit. How much of that first squad had played rugby before they came to UCF?
So we had initially my freshman year, we had about 5 to 7 players that played high school rugby. And then after that, we had some Jupiter guys that, were freshmen at UCF that reached out to me and Gerhardt that we brought onto the team. And, at that point we're like, Florida high school rugby actually has a pretty good basis to draw from here. So we started drawing consistently from that base, and, we'd find out kids that come into UCF graduating, and we'd try to get them to play for the team. Some did, some didn't, but, there's a difference between high school rugby and college rugby, college life being a bit more committed to your academic studies, and, high school not being, I guess, that academically, difficult. So, but, we would get those high school kids out there and, get them used to discipline. And also, by the time a lot of these high school kids came out there, we had Kiwi as our coach. So, we get out there and you drop a ball during, a box drill, and you have to go ahead and, you're running for the next 40 minutes. They're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for. They didn't see the grander picture. But some of us guys that would play a rugby game and, at the 60th minute, the other team has their hands on their knees and we're like standing, sky high. We're like, hey, this is nothing. We've ran twice as much as this in practice already. They, they didn't see the grander picture at that point in time. But, Yeah, the basin of high school rugby was definitely a benefit to us, and it definitely helped out. And I'm happy to see that basin is growing to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I talked to you, must be a few years back now, and I was I think I was chewing you up at the bar after a game, just kind of asking you how UCF had done what they'd done. One thing you said was that you'd gone out and recruited like hell and got enough numbers out there that you could lose players that didn't want to commit and do the hard work, or you could tell the idiots to go away. And after that was done, you were left with a good core, of 25 to 30 that would take you to a national championship game. So recruiting was obviously a big deal for you. What did you find most effective? You mentioned going to gyms, Kiwi, but Jason, what did you find most effective recruiting wise?
It's all about heart, to tell you the truth. We would have people come out, Kiwi can tell you this. We had people come out to practice who were 6'5", 265 pounds. We're like, oh, this guy's an animal. He'd go through a practice and he'd cramp up once or twice. And he'd be like, "Oh, this isn't what I signed up for. I came out here to smash people. I didn't come here for a marathon. I didn't come out here for a running practice. He didn't realize the grander scheme of the things. But you find that person who tries practice after practice after practice, and he may not be the biggest guy in the gym. He may not be the tallest or the strongest, but he has the physical prowess and the heart. At the end of the day, to go ahead and put his body on the line, phase after phase after phase, that's what we're looking for. There's a phase, where you're going to get rocked in a rugby game, but you have to roll out of that ruck, get back up, set the post, and get ready for the next hit.
Now, obviously, Jason, having great numbers helped you as a coach. Did you see that the heart of this team really come together? I don't think you guys lost the game that first year. In 2012, 2013, did you see that heart and passion that was behind these guys, and you knew it could be something special?
Yeah, I definitely did. There was eight or 10 of them living in a house together, and it kind of reminded me of
rugby house. Every club has a rugby. Every college team should have a rugby house. Yes.
And it reminded me of me and my cousin Webster and our mates, where we just lived and breathed rugby. I mean, they built a bar in their house, and they were, there was rats living with them. It was just, they lived and breathed.
Don't tell a landlord.
And the rugby kit that I'd give them to go and wash. I went over their house Friday evening, and it was still sitting there, and I'd given it to them the last Saturday. It hadn't been washed. But they lived and breathed rugby, and what this team did, the special group of men, they bought into the system. Not only did we train 3 times a week, they were in the gym together as a team, and they were lifting, and they were getting stronger, and they just hung out all the time. And if you look at the most successful teams, in any kind of sport, it's about how close you are. You know what I mean? It's you bring each other together. They would eat together. They would sleep together. They would party together. They did everything together, and the brotherhood was unmatchable, and it showed on the field. We were a bunch of 22, 23, 24 guys, and we all had each other's backs wherever we were or wherever we went, and it was just. Man, it was fun times, and what made it even better is when you win, we got to celebrate. We always celebrated the wins. We always celebrated the victories. We always celebrated. It was unmatched. It very much reminded me of some of my younger times with my mates back home in New Zealand, for sure. And we went up against. You've got a shot now of the Lindenwood boys. Of the Lindenwood boys, there was 6 Kiwis in that team. 3 of them played for the same. 2 of them played for this club here, College Rifles. There were South Africans, there was Nigerians, there was Zimbabweans. We had no foreigners in the team, and it was just a beautiful thing for me. It made me so proud that we could get an all-American team with the exception of 1 foreigner and do what we did. And I don't think that will ever be matched.
No, for sure. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that bloody foreigner in a minute too. But yeah, Charlie's showing the highlights of the first win. So let's get to this game. Well, let's talk about the season a little bit first, Jason. You went through that season, and obviously I haven't got all the results, obviously, because certain things are hard to find on the internet, rugby-wise, especially when it involves USA rugby. But I know you went undefeated that year. You actually beat Dartmouth in the semifinals, which people forget. Dartmouth, one of the more historic rugby programs on the East Coast, coached by Gavin Hickey at the time, who's now running the Navy program and the Collegiate All-Americans. A certain Madison Hughes playing for that team, if I remember correctly, now plays sevens, for the USA, even though he's English.
He's captain, but he's the captain.
Yeah, he is the captain of the team. So let's talk about that season, Jason. And what point during that season did you really realize that perhaps you had a shot at this? I mean, obviously, Florida Rugby goes through its cycles where there's stronger teams than other teams, as we've seen over the last few years. But I assume back then you kind of ran through Florida pretty easily. And how much of the postseason do you remember before this Lindenwood game?
Well, going through the season, we actually had a pretty tough run. With the university, we actually had one game that we recruited. It was against FSU, if I remember correctly, where we promoted on campus and we got a bunch of people that came out to the game. And we used to recruit heavily to try to get a large crowd out there. And basically people came out to the game and were tailgating in the parking lot for the game. The university got upset about it. And we told them, hey, we were promoting this game. So the university got upset about it. So for about 3 or 4 weeks here during the season, we had to practice on an off-campus baseball diamond.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't even have our full setup. But during the postseason, the hardest part was the fact that, the university had such limited funding delegated to rugby at the time that we had to do this large fundraising, outreach. Literally, me and some of the guys, Kiwi included, were calling alumni and sponsors and people who we thought could donate, help us out. We're calling them, up to 11, 12 o'clock at night saying, hey, here's what we're doing. We're going to the playoffs. We need money. We need money. We end up raising, I think it was $28,000 to fund us through the playoff run, to play for all the plane tickets and everything else. And that was, a huge thing for me because without that money, we wouldn't have been able to make it to Tennessee, let alone Ohio, to play this game. That's what I was telling people in the locker room before we got on the field for Dartmouth. I was like, guys, people paid us to get a job done up here. People pay to get a job done. You get the fucking job done. We have to do it.
Jason, what do you remember about this? What do you remember about this Dartmouth game that we're showing? Charlie's showing highlights of.
Jason,
Kiwi, remember
me?
No, Kiwi. Yeah, I keep forgetting I got two Jasons.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
okay,
Kiwi.
so what I remember about this, is so we fly up to Bowling Green, Ohio, and we get allocated a certain time on a pitch, and for the 2 weeks before, and Jason Ross was one of the guys. Everyone would talk about this Madison Hughes, and I got sick and tired of hearing this guy's name, Madison Hughes. So I said to the guys, if I hear any more talk about Madison Hughes, we'll run and run. So, I heard Madison Hughes again. So we ran. When we got to Bowling Green and Dartmouth were training on that side, and we were training on that side, I heard Madison Hughes again. So I got the team together and I said, you guys are all focused on this guy Madison Hughes. Let's stop mentioning his name. Let's focus on what we're good at, and if we do what we're good at, we'll win. Well, anyway. We had a fullback, Andy Goings, and Madison Hughes was fullback at that time, and Madison Hughes got a couple of tries, and he's a great rugby player. But we beat Madison Hughes, yes, I remember going out with Gerhardt's dad, the late Jerry Veet. And we went out in the town because, I put the boys all to bed. They had a curfew, and we went downtown Bowling Green, and we went out, Jerry and I, and we had a few beers. And I come back, and I think I kicked open Jason's hotel room, and I told him, this hamburger that I have is called the Madison Cheeseburger, because all this talk about Madison Hughes, it's not one person that makes a rugby team, right? And sometimes you can trick yourself into thinking, you know, if my team is focused on one player, then you're not focused on your job and what you've got to do.
Yeah.
But what I remember about this game is I remember that it was a good battle. It was a good battle for the first 20 minutes. We made a few mistakes. We kicked the ball a couple of times, and I screamed and jumped up and down because I told my whole team we do not kick the ball because no one knew how to kick a ball. And I remember one of the parents coming past me and saying, "How do you think we do?" And I said, "We'll be okay. We've got this." I see them fading, and they're just not used to being hit as hard as we're hitting them, and they're not used to people running as hard as we're running at them.
Right.
And I remember going to this is a funny story. I remember going to the briefing. USA Rugby held a briefing, and it was Jason Ross and myself and Chris Ream. And they have all the officials, and they're going over the rule. And the first thing that the USA Rugby rep said is the halves are 40 minutes each, and a yellow card is 10 minutes at the bin. And I was like, really? That's standard rugby. And we had Gavin Hickey with his 10 or 6 coaching staff and all that. And I remember saying to Jason Ross, I wrote on a piece of paper, because we'd just traveled that day. I wrote on the piece of paper, I said, "Jason, this is boring. I want a beer." A true fact. And then during the game, Gavin Hickey, he actually ran on the field, which, as you know, as a referee, is very much against the rules of rugby. And you would think that somebody of his caliber of rugby would know that. He ran on the field, and he actually got he got told off. But it's good to look at the highlights, and it's just good to see, you know, little old UCF, who, like Jason said, we got to practice on not only was it a diamond baseball field, but it was in a local kind of gated community. And at one stage, the police come and said, "Oh, you guys aren't allowed to train here. You have to move on." This is this. So the things that we achieved, and the cards were stacked against us, and what we did is just, you know, unbelievable.
No, that's why we're here to tell the story. So you knocked off Dartmouth, but then had to face Lindenwood in the final. I'm not sure how much you knew about Lindenwood at that time, but at that time they were the defending D2 national champions. As you said, they were full of scholarship players. They moved to D1A immediately after losing to you guys in the final. This was their only year at 1AA. So I assume you watched their semi-final. And what did you tell the boys going into the final against Lindenwood?
We actually did watch the semi-final. We watched like 25 minutes of it, and then I said, "Let's go. We've got to focus on. We've got to recover for tomorrow. We've got to get in the pool. We've got to relax. We've got to get some food." I think we went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and I saw the skill set, and one player in particular, or 2 players in particular, that stood out for me. One was Mickey Bateman. He was their fly half, and he played high level rugby, schoolboy rugby in New Zealand. He also played for College Rifles. I think he went on to play for Lindenwood. He went on to coach. I can't remember the name of the school, but one of the good programs here. And Morgan Finley was a fullback, and man, he made Madison Hughes look like a baby. His footwork, just his knowledge of the game. I mean, he scored in that other game. I think he scored maybe 4 or 5 tries. So I knew that their skill set was better than ours, but I knew that we were bigger and stronger and tougher, and you know, I was confident. You know, I was more confident going into the Lindenwood game than I was going into the Dartmouth game.
Interesting. Now, Jason Ross, let's look at the game here now. This is the last minute of the game. You were down 10 and had scored a few minutes before that to be down by 3. Were you still on the pitch at this point, Jason?
I was still on the pitch. I was wearing number 20 because number 2 jersey was ripped. We were all.
What do you remember about this last minute of the game? Because it's obviously a memorable last minute in Florida rugby history.
We were completely exhausted.
Make sure you thank Lee.
Before this happened, we made a kick to touch, and if it wasn't for number what was 14. Lee playing at the time? 11 or 14?
Yeah, Lee Marcel.
So Lee was able to make a game-saving tackle and bring their man into touch. So we got a line out. And then at that point in time, it was about a minute left, and the only thing I could think was, God, I better throw this ball straight, and we better win this line out because this is the game right here. We have to maintain possession. So we throw this line out. We start moving through our phases. We break their gain line, and we just start going through our random.
He was wearing number
ball routine. And
Charlie, maybe to that point, Charlie. Can you rewind it to the line out? I'm sure it's on there somewhere.
What happened is we had a penalty around the halfway mark, right? So we needed to get up into their quarter. And Sean Nelson, he kicked the ball, but their winger kept it in play. We always worked on chasing the kick. You always chase the kick. And Lee chased the kick. The guy caught it, and Lee tackled him and drove him out to give us the line out. So without Lee doing this, none of this happens.
And this is obviously the final phase of the play. I'm not sure how many. They didn't count phases on the graphics in this game, but I remember watching this live. I was just saying, just keep it in hand, just keep it tight.
There was a good 12 phases. We knew we were exhausted, and the whole thing was, let's just keep moving the ball forward inch by inch because as long as we keep play going, they're not going to stop the game. Don't commit a penalty. Don't do anything dumb, and let's just keep moving it forward. And when Gerhardt was in the back line calling for it, Max saw him. He's like, I got to give it to Gerhardt because Gerhardt's going to make a play here. And he saw Boozer covered on the wing. He says, I'm going to do this skip pass to Boozer, which, we never practiced skip passes before, but, Boozer was one of the guys that live in the house with us, so we had the household chemistry. He went for the double skip pass to Boozer, and Boozer was uncovered and ran it in.
And lucky it wasn't Gerhardt. Lucky it wasn't Gerhardt's other hand because it would have been intercepted for sure.
Well, that was a big key to it, though, is that Gerhardt, obviously one of the best players on this team and one of the best players in this tournament, obviously drew in a number of players which, left Boozer open on that left wing. You can see what it meant to him when he scored that try. And that was obviously, I think it was 1 second left on the clock. It was one of the most famous victories in Florida history. And how did you guys celebrate that evening, if you can remember?
I'll tell you exactly how we celebrated. We went to Buffalo Wild Wings, and my cousin had flown up, and he had sponsored our team and given us thousands of dollars. And he said to Buffalo Wild Wings, I'm paying for all the drinks, right? I'm paying for everything. But we had to check out of the hotel that night, and we had to drive to
Toledo.
Where was it?
Toledo.
Columbus?
Toledo.
Yeah, we had to drive there. So anyway, my cousin who's there in the black jersey, he put his card down on the bar, and the bar tab was maybe about maybe $4,000 or $6,000 or something. We just shouted everybody. And at the end of it, when the Buffalo Wild Wings guy went to run the tab, my cousin says, "Oh, I don't have a credit card." but anyway, he did. He was just messing with him. And then we all jumped into the vans and we drove to the hotel. And we celebrated there some more.
There was 3 kids on the team who were under the age of 21 who are DDs. So we covered that aspect of the night.
Sure.
Yes.
No, good stuff. Good stuff. One of the most famous victories, you said, in Florida rugby history. So,
and what it was just that it was that desire to never give up. It was that desire. I remember Smitty. I remember Smitty's dad, Steve. He came up to me with like 15 minutes to go, and I think Dartmouth had a bit of a lead because what would happen? We would score, they would score, then they they would score a game, and then we would get, it was back and forth. And at one stage, they were maybe up 13 points. And he said, "Kiwi, how are you thinking?" And I said, "I think we got this, mate. I think we got this." And just to see these grown guys start crying and just, the work we did, the adversity we faced, and everything come together, and we won the national championship. And if I can just say one thing, we were in Nashville Knoxville at the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And I told a little bit of a fib to the guys. I went into the restroom, and all the other teams, they were all kitted up and they had all night. And UCF, we turned up and mismatched things. And I went out to the guys and I says, the Tennessee guys, they just said, "Oh, look at these guys from UCF. They can't even afford their own team kit or matching shirts." It was a fib. I told them a fib just to light a spark. So
that's great coaching right there. Before I get into the next, Charlie's anybody who's watching and wants to jump in and has any stories. I know that there's probably some UCF former alumni, players, friends, etc. Charlie's going to post a link on Facebook and on YouTube if you want to jump in and tell some stories. Chris Ream was just telling 170 Jaeger bombs he said that night. That may have added up to about half of that bill.
Right.
He's probably not exaggerating, I would say. So
no, he's not exaggerating. He's definitely not exaggerating.
So the next season, Jason Ross, let's go into the next season. You only lost 4 starters, if my research serves me correctly, and you were just crushing people. I saw the Cirque semi scores. You beat Georgia Southern 108-0, and then Florida State 106-0 in the Cirque final that year. Cirque, which is obviously the predecessor to the FCC conference we have now. So talk about that season, Jason, just how you had that momentum carry over from that championship.
Well, we definitely had a good base to start from. Some of the backups became starters, and, we had some newcomers like Scott that were experienced in rugby and definitely had a huge skill set that were able to definitely immediately add to the team. So, we had a little drop off by losing some size, but, we definitely gained some talent. Some of those backups that were learning the game before have now stepped into starting roles. You look at Icebox Tyler Turner, who was a backup in the 2012-2013 year. Now he became a starter in the 2013-2014 year. And if you look at one of the first tries we scored against Arizona, he was one of the guys that broke the gain line and gained 70 meters on a crash ball to start our real momentum.
Well, as you talked about Scotty Waters, let's bring him in. Charlie, bring in Scotty, who's our final guest this evening, in case unless anybody else wants to join us. Chris Ream says he still has the receipt from 170 Jaeger bombs that night. Scott Waters joining us.
It was an infamy.
Scotty's joining us from a bunker, apparently, in Hoboken, New Jersey. A very poorly lit bunker.
I think there's a blackout in the city, to be honest. So I'll just use that as my excuse.
So, Scotty, give us a bit of your rugby history and how you ended up at UCF.
Yeah, I originally from Ireland. I had moved over to Florida back in 2009, and I was living in Sarasota, Florida, on the West Coast. And I was doing my my freshman and sophomore year in college out that direction, and I was playing with a local men's club who actually just became established in 2010, I believe. And so me coming over, it was an interesting sight because I wasn't 100% sure on how big rugby was in Florida, if I'd be able to even find a team in Florida, and to have it locally, 20 minutes away to start training and playing was really meant something. And so I played with the Sarasota men's rugby club, and a couple of the guys who had been, and then from there I had actually learned how big Florida rugby was. There's guys from the Pelicans, from Orlando teams. I think there was guys from the Naples Hammerheads, I think it was. So kind of getting more and more, and so I moved up to Orlando 2013. And I think actually the first person I reached out to was Jason Ross. And
it was Di that put us in contact.
Oh, Di, yeah, because Di Morgan, he's been around Florida, coaching, and he's been in the backgrounds and stuff. And he was actually coming to coach the Sarasota men's team, but I was actually leaving that year. And he had said, all right, well, I know a few of those guys. And, he had mentioned Jason's name. And he said, when you get up there, you should reach out to him. I believe they have a team up there. And when he said, I believe they have a team up there, this was the, I'm my first, week of college. I think I remember meeting up with Jason in the business building of UCF. And he was just, giving me the lowdown. Hey, we're doing trainings. It'll start back up. Come by, blah, blah, blah. And I had no idea that UCF actually had won a national championship the year before. I had no clue. I didn't do any research. You
hadn't found rugbyfl.com yet then? Obviously.
You what?
So you hadn't found rugbyfl.com, Charlie's.
Right, you're dead right. You're dead right. It was just one of those things. And so it's funny because this is the prelude to my first day of training and, meeting all the guys and stuff like that. And there was a little bit of a pep in everybody's step because they were living off that high of the prior season. Sure. And I remember, having my conversation with Kiwi and again, he spoke to it today, but he prided himself on the fact that he was just like, and kind of gave me a bit of shtick because we just won a national championship with all American guys. And I don't know about you. I don't know about letting a foreigner into this team kind of type thing. So I immediately had to make some sort of impression off of that. And it was, from the get-go, there was that. And I remember we were all sitting in a circle. I don't know if it was the first or second training session, but it was like, hey, the new guys, introduce yourself. And everybody stood up, said their name, how much rugby experience there was. And I stood up and I said, I played rugby for this amount and I want to win another national championship. I could already tell from the get-go that we had a committed atmosphere, talent for beyond belief. And I knew from the first or second training session, I was like, I don't come here to mess around. I'm here to win and do it all over again. I want to partake in whatever you just has transpired over the last year. And we, to say that we got rolling in that year is an understatement. We kept it in Florida. We played our teams in Florida. I think we lost. I don't know. It was undefeated season, the first season for you guys in the 2012-2013. I think we lost one game, and that one game was a technicality, right? If I'm not mistaken, because there was something about a referee fell through and then someone had the option to reschedule.
Right.
Yeah. And so,
to clear the air, there was a miscommunication between me and the vice president. I was taking my LSAT that day, the day of the match, so I was actually missing the match. And we had a miscommunication to who was confirming the referee. And the referee fell through for the match, and that's the technicality that cost us our loss.
Yeah, exactly. So to call it a loss, and it was not a loss by trial. It was just a technicality of sorts. But we and honestly, the rest was history. It was an incredible run, and we just took over teams. When you go into 100-point differentials against teams in Florida, and it was always a stepping stone of just like, all right, like the competition's it's not going to continue to be like this, so just stay humble. We're just putting up whatever performance we can. It's going to get more and more competitive. And when we're putting up into the Sweet 16 in the circ, like especially the circ, where we were like, all right, this is make or break now, get push on. And it was a 200-point differential between two teams in 2 days. And so, the high just kept going and going and going. And then even when we get into the final, that was a 40-point game or 30-point game. So, the high just kept continuing. And I think we just kept getting better and better. We got more cohesive as a unit. And it was just an absolute stormer of a season.
In the Sweet 16, that's some of the results here. You beat LSU 50-19. You beat South Carolina 44-28, which was the closest game you guys had in the postseason. That was in the quarterfinals. And as you can see here, just showing now against San Diego, You smashed them 43-5, and you can see it was a pretty relatively close game there towards the end of the first half. But Jason, as you said, I'm sure fitness just took over, and you guys pulled away late, and then played Arizona in the championship game, and that was even more of a whooping. That was 64-13. So Jason, Kiwi, talk about that season, how it was different than that first season. Obviously, you guys seem to run through things a little easier. Maybe talk about which title you were more proud of, that first one or the second one.
So, in my mind, in the 2013 season, I say we shocked the nation, right? We totally shocked the nation. No one expected any team from Florida. Yeah, I know UCF prior, they had made some, they'd gone to Battleship, and I don't know if you won it or got runners up, J-Boy. They had some success with sevens, but, you know, in the 15s game, we shocked the nation. No one expected UCF Rugby to win the 2013 D1 AA, and we won it. 2014 is what I call we rocked the nation, because we established people who we are, knew our style of rugby, they knew what to expect, and they couldn't bang with us. They couldn't hang with us. I remember going to Marietta in Georgia, Life University, and I remember walking up the stairs and to Dan Payne at the time, his office, and I saw a couple of national championship trophies there, and I was like, oh wow, this is a great facility, and this is, you know, this is awesome. Reminds me of home, a little bit of a culture, club atmosphere, and that. Well, on that weekend, we played we played FSU, and I know that there was a big rivalry between Florida State and UCF, and I think we beat them 128-3. And I think that is the record still today of the amount of points scored on Life University's rugby field.
That surprised me.
You know, and beating teams by 100 points doesn't really do good for us. You know what I mean? Because when you go to the higher level rugby, you're used to just smashing these teams, and then when you go to the higher level of rugby, it's harder, it's tougher, and sure. you've got to keep the guys composed, because, you know, we went into every game as if we were just going to beat them by 100 points. Well, when you get into the Sweet 16, the Elite 8, and the Final 4, it doesn't happen like that, because, you know, you're in for the battle, and we were up for the battle. I remember going to Paliato, and, you know, just so much fun to take a group of college kids and myself, and we fundraised and we begged for money. The university gave us a few grand, you know, my cousin gave us 10 grand, and other people gave us money, and to fly a team cross country, we used to, you know, drive the vans cheap. Or fly to Pennsylvania, it's not cheap. But we had fun the whole time we were there, but we knew we had a goal at hand, and we had to achieve it. I remember in the last game, against who was it? Arizona. I talked to the coach beforehand, and he says, "Hey, how much do you get paid?" And I says, "I don't get paid anything. How much do you get paid?" He said, "Oh, $65,000." I said, "Wow, that's awesome." I remember it was a close, it was back and forth. They had a couple of good backs and a couple of good forwards. But then I saw the momentum shift, and I remember exactly what I said to my boys in the in goal at halftime. I said, "Guys, they cannot bang with us." And then the second half, we come out and we put all those points on them. And then to fly from, unfortunately, Jason Ross, he booked us tickets to fly back on Sunday night just after winning our second national championship.
We had no money.
And I don't know. And I don't know if you know too much about San Francisco Paliato, but there's no bars open after like 6 o'clock on a Sunday night. So anyway, you fly back, and I remember saying to some of the boys, "You look at this flight. We're flying all the way from the West Coast to the East Coast, and you look down, and we are the best D1 AA rugby team in the whole nation." Oh, my mate has to give me a kiss because he's going to bed. Love you, buddy.
See ya.
So it's just it was it was so satisfying what we had achieved. We started in the 2013, and then the 2014. I think we were better in 2014 than we were in 2013 because of the experience, the experience of what we needed to do. And Scotty brought a wealth of knowledge. He brought a wealth of knowledge to if you look at the plays, Gerhardt was the main man in he was the MVP in 2013, Scotty, and MVP in 2014. He brought that rugby knowledge, and being the foreigner, I remember that conversation. But man, did they listen and respond to him?
Now, Jason Ross, obviously, fundraising again. It was a lot further to go into Stanford, but you had the previous national championship behind you. Obviously, all colleges out there struggle with fundraising. But how did the college help you out any more after you won that first title, or did you find it easier, to get the money off the alumni and the friends and family after you won that first title? How was it that second year?
After the first title, it was definitely easier at that point. You kind of have that base of support behind you for everyone that donated the first year. But, we were still hitting the phones late at night. I had a list of all the alumni phone numbers. We'll call them up and saying, hey, I don't know if you heard, this is what we're doing. Set the GoFundMe page. Everyone's shooting out to all the alumni, putting all the emails on it, blasting it, 2-3 times a week to their email addresses saying, hey, I don't know if you guys heard yet. We're playing for another national championship. And I don't want to say it's synonymous with panhandling, but yeah, we were out there begging.
We were
out there asking for any dollar, any cent we can get to help us make it the way. The flights that we got to California were the only flights we could afford. I actually think that, if I remember correctly, we did not have the money at the point in time that we booked the flights, so we put them on Katie's girlfriend's, now wife's, Katie's credit card to book us to get out there with the aspiration that we're going to fundraise enough to pay her back.
That's my wife. Yeah. Yeah. And we must also thank Jane and Don Arian, because they did a lot of work to help organize the travel, for sure.
Yeah, no,
fantastic. Jane was. I'd be looking for hotels in between my classes, and I would have an email from Jane with 6 or 7, suggestions with the hotel manager's personal phone numbers saying, here are the rates, here are the dates, here's everything you need to know. So it really helped me streamline the process, kind of having a right-hand, woman there, so to speak. And also, Jerry wasn't there for the fundraising aspect, but definitely motivation-wise, Jerry Veit, he was there with us the entire way.
He definitely was.
For sure. No, big thanks to you. I think we saw Jerry in one of those videos celebrating with you guys on the field. I think it was the first one when you scored that winning try. Yeah, Jerry will always be remembered as one of the faces in the crowd in those UCF finals. There's no doubt about it.
And what he said to me, and I'll never forget this. Jerry roomed with me in the hotel. He said to me, Kiwi, to watch my son win a national championship has superseded anything I've ever done in rugby. And that's just that I'll never forget that. He and Jerry did a lot in rugby. He was very successful in rugby, but to see his son supersede, and get the national championships, and it was very special times, and may Jerry rest in peace. Good man, sure. A good man gone way too early.
No doubt about it. It definitely takes a village, and the rugby family really comes together. When teams need that extra help, I'm sure you received help from other clubs and other players that maybe played against you, getting that fundraising go to the title games. All right, let's move on to the last season, 2014-2015. Now let's go to
Scotty. I'm sorry, I'm losing my internet connection. Sorry.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to go to Scotty. We're going to go to Scotty real quick, because Scott, you captained the team this season, right? If I'm correct.
I did, yeah. So big shoes to fill. When we reloaded again for the upcoming the next year, we had a bunch of the guys who were there originally. Gerhardt and co had basically moved on. They were graduated, so definitely some big shoes to fill during this.
We had 4 players that basically had played in the previous 2 national championships. I think it's James Boozer, Icebox, Grady, and there was one other. Oh, Dan Arian.
Yeah, correct.
Even though Dan only lasted 6 minutes, like 6 minutes in the final.
This game that's on right now, yeah.
6 minutes. That's 4 longer than usual.
You lost 9 seniors, I think I'd found in my research, including 6 starters from the year before. So you certainly weren't expected to get as far as you did that season. Scotty, sort of take us through that campaign, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, to start off, it was a big task, and again, because there was going to be just a huge, like, one with the recruiting to see if we can fill some of these, we had a bunch of guys who kind of came over and they had an opportunity to step up, who may have been like not getting game time, have maybe played, B-side, any of those kind of games the prior year. So there was definitely a big shoes to fill for a lot of people. But then also as well, like, the recruiting never stops, because, once we're all gone, this thing needs to keep on turning, and so that process needs to be put in place. And we did. We found some guys who are ROTC guys from a part of UCF on campus, and they came in and they slotted in nicely. We had a bunch of guys who are big guys, kept active like outside of college and their studies, and it took a little bit of a learning process. And I think that was the first year for me, really, truly, seeing the value of Kiwis coaching, with taking guys who have not had a lot of rugby experience, kind of telling them basically, this is your job, this is what you're going to do, and we're going to crack on from there. And then the fitness kind of just came along on top of that. And guys, it was a tough season. Geez, the first game that we played, I remember it very vividly, because we were down playing FAU, I believe, and I actually had a stomach virus that day, and so I was not able. I think I played maybe 10 minutes.
It was FIU. It was
FIU, is it? All right, yep. Yeah. And I mean, I think we lost that game, so that was like a bitter pill to swallow. Given all, like, there's an expectation, but again, it doesn't. It just puts a little bit of a bump in the road of the entire process. And so, we worked hard, and we became a lot more dominant and a lot more cohesive throughout the games. And we flew to Pittsburgh, and we played a couple of games out there which were hard fought. And then once we found ourselves, slowly but surely, with all the hard work and effort, we found ourselves in another national championship title contention, and it was in Kennesaw State in Georgia. And that game, I've gone back, and it was a tough pill. It was a really tough pill after the game. Even the years after, because it was always one of those ones where, like, all right, a team that went from nothing on the map to winning a first national championship, doing it again the next year, and to do the trifecta would have just been
right
more, and just elevated it even more. And it was a tough game. The UC Davis were calm, collected. We when I go back and look at what we were doing, the hard fought, straight running, big carries, big forwards pushing up and the good defense as well. We weren't putting up the points that we were in finals prior, at the prior year. And hats off to the UC Davis. They just kind of stuck with their game plan. And again, it was a tight, looking even at it right now, is 3 points in it. Literally 3 points. This was almost like a Lindenwood situation, where we were on the forward foot, trying to push, trying to just get as much yards as we could, and it just didn't work out. It didn't work out, and that's it. Kind of there, and it was tough, but it was a humbling experience, because not all game plans kind of go the way you think they are. Going into it, until you're in it and you think you're going to plan and this is how things are going to happen. But I mean, this game was unforeseen. I think we were going in strong. I think in the first half we were definitely putting them on the back foot, but they kept up with it though. I mean, yeah, it was a bitter loss, but I mean, what can I say? You can't undo the past, and you take the mistakes and stuff. And I know a bunch of those guys are new, and we're going to carry on UCF rugby, and this was something of a learning experience for them, and that's invaluable. It's invaluable.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that. Scotty and I talked about it at the first lot of trainings, and we had lost 70% of the team, 60 or 70% of the team. As a coach, you never want to let your team know how you're feeling. The first loss against FIU, and Ronnie's a great coach. And he built a great program with FIU. We lost that game, and then we just had guys in that team that were just too fresh for rugby, and I thought, man, we're not even going to get out of the state this year. We're not even going to make. We're not even going to represent Florida in the SIRC, and we did, and we made it all the way to the national championship game, and I was honestly totally surprised. Scotty led the team because, unfortunately, 3/4 of the way through the year, and I take responsibility for this. USA Rugby changed the rules with coaching, and if you had if you had been arrested, and I've been arrested, that you weren't allowed to coach. So I wasn't effectively allowed to coach from the sideline. I had to do it from the stand, and that was really hard because I was the coach. At trainings, I was the one that told them what to do. But then on game day in Pennsylvania and also in Kennesaw State, I wasn't allowed to be a part of it. That was a hard pill for me to swallow. Scotty had to run the team, and Ken Lindsay, who started the club, he stepped in and ran the team. And Raul helped out, but it was my team for the 3 years, and the guys responded to me well. Well, you can't respond to the coach when he's sitting in the stands, unfortunately. So no excuses. UCF Davis, they wanted it more than us, and they deserved the win. And they went on and did what we did. They went on and backed it up and won another national championship. And then fortunately, they didn't win a third either. So,
Yeah, well, UC Davis had dropped down. They were in 1A the season, up until the season before that, playing against the likes of St. Mary's and Cal, right, Berkeley, etc. And so dropped down to 1AA this year. So you're basically playing, a team from a division above you as well. I know you beat Merchant Marine Academy in the quarters pretty handily, and then West Virginia in the semis. And then, you were within 4 or 5 minutes to winning that game. There was just an unfortunate error at a scrum, on your own 5 meter line that ended up with them scoring that winning try. But still a valiant effort, as you said.
Yeah. Hey, I couldn't have been prouder of any of the guys that I taught. And you speak about rugby, and you speak about the camaraderie. Let me just tell you real quick. There was one guy that stood out for me, and his name is Reggie, right? And this is a guy who comes out of Little Haiti, and he'd played football. And Scotty, Jason, what would he have weighed when he turned up to training?
Oh, he's probably 270, was he?
He was a big boy.
Yeah, he was
270 pounds, and with all my fitness and run, and he was the last guy, but he never gave up, and he never gave up, and he never gave up. And, he probably got down to what, 210, 215?
Yeah. Oh, he was ripped.
50 pounds just spread off. Yeah.
And that's what rugby's about. So then he had a birthday party, and we got all the boys from the club, and we went to the Lazy Moon Pizza, and we got the club funds, and I said, let's buy him pizza. And he said, Coach, no one's ever put on a birthday party for me. He's from Little Haiti, and we changed the direction of his life. Now he's full-time engineer working on roadways, and that's stories like that is why you give back to the game, and I couldn't be more proud of what Reggie's done and what he's become. And then we have other guys. A lot of the other guys from UCF, they went over to Australia and they went over to New Zealand and they experienced rugby culture. And Boozer, James Boozer, who scored that final try in the 2013 game, he just won another championship over in Byron Bay. So up
the bay.
Rugby's the greatest game for camaraderie and friendship, and you build mates for life.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Jason. It's one of those things that sort of disappoints me a little bit. Is a lot of the guys that you see, winning these championships that are from your team that aren't playing club rugby down here in South Florida anymore. I'm sure, as you said, some of them are playing elsewhere. How many of the guys are still sort of playing rugby actively?
I don't know, Ross, but we're old. We're old now.
15 is only 5 years ago, Jason. So I know they're not too old. But, it's a shame that we guys from the South Florida area that won that. A lot of guys that won that first year from the South Florida area that aren't playing club rugby anymore.
No, you're right.
Those things.
It is one of those things. Sometimes it's like Jason Ross turn squeeze into finance. You don't have the time. You don't have the time. Rugby takes up a lot of time, it's unfortunate because when we were successful, I got contacted by USA Rugby, but at that time they wanted some of our players to pay $1,000 and $1,500 just to go to a trial. These kids can't come up with $1,000 or $1,500, nor should they.
That's one of the things I hope really comes out of this pandemic is that the national championships perhaps are sort of on hold for a while, but that regional, developmental and the MLR as well is helping with this. That regional developmental sides and academies are coming out of. We talked about it in the 3 quick things. That a player from Florida now, may have to go to Central Florida or North Florida, but that's as far as you need to go to get seen by an MLR side. As you said, Jason, back in the day, you'd have to spend $1,000, $1,500 to go somewhere, whether it was Colorado or California, just to be seen. So hopefully, that increases the opportunities for Florida rugby players to play at the highest level that they can play.
Yeah. Even just speaking to that, like I'm up in the New York City area or just the New York area, and they have their MLR team, the Rugby United, and they're heavily active in the community, and they're going to high schools. They're putting on clinics. They're putting on games. They're the coaching games, and they're basically really trying to see if they can tap into the talents that exist, because it really does. There's a huge interest, and it's only grown in the 10, 11 years that I've almost been over here in the States. It's grown exponentially, and so you get to see it, and you get to see that interest. And I think it's those teams who have that structure, who are gaining that structure, are able to kind of build that up a little bit more as well, invest in those areas. And so, Florida is a hub. I know we're hearing about the chat about maybe a potential MLR team in Florida that's slated. That's all you need. If you could have an NFL version of rugby in Florida, like in America, like that would be the goal in a sort of sense, where it's so mainstream. It's that you have this outlet and to see it, and make USA rugby at the international level a lot more competitive than it is now, because it's huge potential, huge potential.
Potential. Looking earlier today at the Free Jacks, the New England Free Jacks, one of the other MLR sides, they made an announcement. They're going to have 13 regional training groups, so basically 13, young all-star teams in the obviously New England's perhaps a slightly bigger area than Florida, but not much bigger, and hopefully that's sort of a system that. In a big state like Florida, where it takes you 5 hours to get from one end of the state to the other, you could have a South Florida team, you could have a West Florida team, a Central Florida team, a mid-state team, and all these other representative sides that could play each other, play at higher level rugby, and then produce more talent out of that.
And we have a Floridian that plays for the New England team, Mitchell Wilson. He used to play Orlando Youth, and then he went and played at Life University.
He does, yeah. No, it's great to see the number of players we've had in the MLR. We've obviously already talked to Cam Dolan and Alec Tucci. With Malik Esdale playing in Houston, Florida. This is sort of quietly becoming a little Florida rugby factory. Now, Jason, you decided to walk away at the end of 2015. Talk about that decision and what you're doing in rugby these days.
Me or him?
Greenwich. Kiwi.
Okay, the reason I walked away from rugby because I wasn't able to coach again because of the rules, with the
right.
So I've finished. I'm eligible to coach again, but in that time I've had two beautiful kids with my wife Katie. I have Hank, who's 3.5, and Elizabeth, who's 1.5, and I'm a full-time stay-at-home parent, and that's very, very, very busy. And but one day, doing all this has kind of given me a little bit of an itch that maybe I might throw my hat in the ring again and try and get back a little bit to rugby again.
Yeah, listen, we need all the coaches we can get. I think that's one of the biggest problems in Florida is the old boys, whether it's giving back by refereeing or coaching, they really need to get, when they do have the time, it doesn't need to be, on a full-time or even a 20-hour week basis, but even just coming out and helping with the young guys. If you have a local team, even if you came out to one practice a month, I'm sure it would help. Jason, you're a lawyer now, not playing rugby at the moment, I assume. Maybe UCF alumni games, is that about it?
That's about it right now. Once in a while, a friendly tournament, barefoot sevens or, a sevens tournament here and there. Looking to get into coaching before the pandemic happened, but, we'll see what happens when that's over.
You're based out of where now?
Live in Fort Lauderdale, work in Miami, so South Florida. I was looking to rekindle the old high school team at Northeast High School. Back in the day, Rocco Krins and Bill Shelley and Kuzo and Gerhardt's father, Jerry Veit, had the Northeast Nomads.
That's right.
So I was going to talk to the high school about rekindling that club, but
East Broward could do with a little kick. They've had the St. Thomas team a couple of years ago, and then the sort of ruckus of in and around the scene for the last couple of years, but faded away a little bit last year. And a ton of talent out here in East Broward.
Yeah,
with young kids looking for things to do. So hopefully that works out nicely. Scotty, I know you're a big finance guy up there in the Northeast. Are you still involved in rugby in any way?
Recently, and actually I do want to mention something as well. You remember Hank Granich, because I'm going to see that kid playing rugby at some stage.
It's a great name.
No doubts about it. Hank the Tank is going to be making a name for himself, I'm sure, with the influence from his dad. So
if he doesn't represent USA, he'll be maybe the All Black captain. Who knows?
I mean, if
Hank the Yank is captain of the All Blacks. I'll take that one.
Hank the Yank Tank. I like that.
But so actually recently, probably about 3-4 weeks ago, there's a competitive New York touch league. So I'm not doing contact. I think I've hung those boots up for good in that sort of sense. But I actually trained with them today. The pandemic has kind of really put a stint in that, but they do compete nationally. I think they usually have their competitions. They used to have them actually in Orlando in the Disney area. Yes. But they actually changed things out now. I think they're out in San Diego, but obviously this year they weren't. But a good bunch of guys. It's just it's a different breed in all honesty in terms of strategy and stuff like that. But I mean that's as much active activity I'm doing with the rugby these days. And who knows? Coaching's always been something interesting to me. To see the game develop and to be a part of that would be a really dream in a sort of sense. And and who knows? So there may be an opportunity down the line that I'd be very much open to, but we'll see.
Good stuff. Yeah, there's a guy, Tim Oxenford. I don't know. I doubt he's watching this tonight, but he plays for Palm Beach, and he's a big touch guy. He's gone all over the world and played, in the World Championship. I always give him grief about playing touch, but then two of my friends over the last few years have torn their ACL playing touch. So I need to just pull back a little bit on how touch isn't real rugby. But yeah, no, it's good to see you keeping involved. And Scotty, thanks for joining us tonight. Kiwi, I think you should have the final word on this whole thing. Just what do you look back on? How do you look back on those 3 years, those amazing 3 years in general?
I just, it was just amazing. It was, the highlights other than having my wife and my kids of my life, just to be able to travel this great country and dominate in rugby, but also do it on a shoestring budget and do something that no one else in this state has done, and I don't think it'll be repeated again. Just what we did with what we didn't have.
Mate, you're good at what you do.
Yeah, good at what you do. That's what I said to me and Jason. We used to say to each other, "You're good at what you do." You're good at what you do. The last word I want to say is, it's with a heavy heart that our UCF Rugby Club, we lost one of our supporters. Ernie Smith passed away on September 30th after a battle with pancreatic cancer. And he was a very big supporter of our club. And he would travel in his RV or his truck with his wife, Bert. And, I just want to, the final word is rest in peace, Ernie. You'll be missed. I enjoyed sharing a couple of beers with you, and you were a big part of our team.
Yeah, as Andy, I think, mentioned in the comments earlier, the rugby team is more than just the guys on the field, and on the bench. Yeah. It's the family, the friends, the fundraisers that help all these things happening. Without them, there's no doubt that these golden years of UCF rugby would have happened from 2013 to 2015. Well, Jason's, I'll say Kiwi, Jason Ross and Scotty up in New York, appreciate you taking the time to join us on our little podcast this evening. I think we're having fun. Bringing some Florida rugby stories. Kiwi's got one more word. Go on, Kiwi.
KCD, as Jerry Veet would say, kill, crush, and destroy.
Destroy!
2020 sort of done that to us. Let's go back. Hopefully 2021 we can turn it around and get back on the rugby pitch and either as referees or as fans or as players and do exactly Jerry Veet. That's some good words to live by. So I appreciate you guys joining us tonight. And it was tuning in. Obviously, this will be available on replay on Facebook and on YouTube, and you can check it out on the audio variety at any of your major podcast platforms. As Charlie posted there, you can see them at rugbyfl.com/TFR or on any major podcast platform. If you just search for Rugby Florida or Florida Rugby, we are the #1 rugby podcast in Florida because we are the only one for now. But again, appreciate everybody joining us. If you'd like to support the podcast, please go to rugbyfl.com/GoFundMe or get in touch with Charlie or myself if you'd like to sponsor us. And obviously, we appreciate everybody tuning in, and we'll see you, I think, in a couple of weeks. But yeah, Jason's and Scotty, appreciate you, and it's a great trip down memory lane for UCF Rugby and all the people involved. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
Thanks to Charlie. Thanks to Charlie. I always forget Charlie for doing all the work behind the scenes with all the videos.
Thanks, Charlie.
Down in the video side.
Orchestrating behind the scenes,
puts together the highlights and all that, and it's invaluable work that I can't do my job without. So I always forget to say thanks to Charlie as well. Cheers, guys. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers. All right, guys. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.